The crisp autumn air carried the scent of pine and earth as I tightened the straps on my backpack, excitement buzzing through my veins. This trip was supposed to be the reset button, Lauren, and I needed a chance to step away from the noise of everyday life, the stresses of work, the distractions of technology, and just be together. We used to do this all the time, before the tension, before the distance, before the lingering doubt that I kept pushing down every time I noticed her staring at her phone a little too long or smiling at a message she never shared. "Are you sure you packed everything?" Lauren's voice broke through my thoughts. She stood by the truck, adjusting her jacket, her blonde hair tied in a loose ponytail. She looked beautiful, the kind of effortless beauty that made me fall for her years ago. "Yeah, triple-checked," I said, tossing the last bag into the truck bed. "Besides, if we forgot something, that's part of the fun, right? Surviving in the wild." She chuckled, but there was something off about it, like her heart wasn't really in it. "Right. Surviving." I brushed it off, climbing into the driver's seat. The sun had just begun its descent, casting golden hues over the winding roads as we headed toward the Montana wilderness. The plan was simple: 2 nights off the grid, just the two of us under the stars, reconnecting. A few miles into the drive, Lauren reached for her phone again, quickly turning the screen away when she noticed me looking. "Work stuff," she mumbled. I forced a smile. "Didn't we agree? No work, no distractions. Just us and nature." She sighed, slipping the phone into the glove compartment. "You're right. Just us." But something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. The drive took nearly 3 hours, winding through towering trees and past quiet lakes reflecting the darkening sky. We arrived at the campsite just as dusk settled in, the orange glow of the setting sun casting long shadows through the pines. I set up the tent while Lauren busied herself gathering firewood, her movements quick, almost restless. We ate dinner by the crackling fire, the warmth warding off the evening chill. "This was a good idea," she said finally, her voice softer now, almost guilty. "Yeah," I agreed, watching her closely. It was... The silence stretched between us, and for a moment, it felt like old times, before she started working late, before she started girls' nights that didn't include any of the women I knew, before the way she touched me felt different, distant. After a while, she stood and stretched. "I'm going to turn in. I'm exhausted." I nodded, staying by the fire as she disappeared into the tent. Something felt wrong, a nagging sensation at the back of my mind that refused to let go. I wanted to believe this trip would bring us back together, but as I stared into the flames, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were already lost. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the towering trees. I stretched inside the tent, reaching for the familiar warmth of Lauren beside me, only to find an empty space. The fabric where she had lain was cool. My stomach tightened as I sat up, scanning the inside of the tent. Her sleeping bag was unzipped, tossed carelessly to the side, but her hiking boots were gone. I listened. The forest was waking up, the distant chirping of birds mixing with the rustling of leaves in the breeze. But there were no footsteps, no sound of someone moving nearby. I unzipped the tent and stepped outside, the cold ground sending a shiver through my bare feet. The fire pit was still smoldering, thin curls of smoke rising lazily into the sky. Our gear was untouched, our food still stored safely. Nothing was out of place, except for my wife. I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. "Maybe she just went for a walk," I muttered, forcing myself to shake off the unease creeping up my spine. Slipping on my boots, I wandered toward the lake. It was the most logical place she'd be. Sure enough, as I reached the rocky shoreline, I spotted her standing near the water's edge, arms wrapped around herself as she gazed out across the still surface. Something about the way she stood, rigid, tense, made my gut twist. "Lauren," I called out, making my way down toward her. She startled slightly before turning to face me, her expression neutral, almost too neutral. "Hey," she said, offering a small, tight-lipped smile. "I didn't want to wake you. Just needed some fresh air. You okay?" I asked, searching her face for answers. She hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" I pressed, stepping closer. She kicked a loose stone into the water, watching the ripples spread across the surface. Work, life, us. Her voice was distant, almost rehearsed, and I felt something inside me sink. You've been acting off lately, I admitted, crossing my arms. Not just today. For weeks. I feel like you're always somewhere else, even when we're together. She let out a breathy laugh, shaking her head. Brandon, not this again. I just want to understand, I said, keeping my voice calm. I mean, isn't this why we came out here? To reconnect? She chewed on her bottom lip, avoiding my gaze. I don't know what you want me to say. I wanted her to tell me the truth. I wanted her to say something, anything, that made sense of the way she had been acting. But instead, she turned and wrapped her arms around me, pressing her body close. Her lips found mine, and for a moment, I let myself believe that maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe she really was just distracted by work, by stress, by things we hadn't talked about enough. But then, later that night, she went to bed early. I sat by the fire, watching the flames flicker, listening to the quiet hum of the forest. Every now and then, I glanced toward the tent, half expecting her to peek out and tell me to come inside. But she never did. The unease from that morning hadn't faded. If anything, it had settled deeper into my chest, a warning that I couldn't ignore. Something was wrong, and I had a feeling I was about to find out exactly what it was. The fire crackled low, its embers glowing like dying stars as the night stretched on. The forest had settled into a hushed silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. I sat by the pit, staring into the flames, replaying the day's events over and over in my head. Lauren had been distant, too distant, the kind of distant that wasn't just about work stress or exhaustion. The kind of distant that signaled something deeper, something unspoken. I glanced at the tent where she lay, or at least where she was supposed to be. An uneasy feeling had settled in my gut ever since that morning by the lake. The way she avoided eye contact, the way she brushed off my questions, it didn't sit right with me. And then, tonight, she had gone to bed early. Too early. It was unlike her. We always stayed up late on our camping trips, talking, stargazing, reminiscing about the things that had brought us together in the first place. But tonight, she had barely even looked at me before crawling into the tent. I checked my watch. 1:13 nachts. I exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of my neck. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I was being paranoid. But something told me I wasn't. Standing up, I dusted off my jeans and quietly stepped toward the tent. I crouched down, slowly unzipping the flap just enough to peek inside. My breath caught. The sleeping bag was empty. The panic hit me first, a sudden rush of adrenaline that made my heart hammer against my ribs. Then came the questions. Where was she? Had she gone for another walk? Was she just sitting somewhere, thinking? Or was she with someone else? The thought sent a cold wave through me, sharper than the mountain air. I straightened and scanned the woods, my eyes adjusting to the dim moonlight filtering through the trees. The fire cast flickering shadows, but beyond that, the forest was dark. Still, and then I saw it, footprints, leading away from our campsite, deep into the woods. I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed a flashlight, flicked it on, and followed the tracks, moving as quietly as possible. My boots barely made a sound against the dirt path as I maneuvered through the thick underbrush. My pulse pounded in my ears. Each step forward felt heavier, weighed down by the truth I was about to uncover. The tracks veered slightly downhill, toward the clearing near the lake. My breath hitched as I heard something, a low murmur of voices carried on the wind. I stepped carefully, keeping to the shadows. My flashlight was off now. I didn't need it. The moon cast just enough light for me to see, and the voices were getting clearer. Then I saw them. Lauren stood there, just beyond the clearing, wrapped in the arms of someone else. Someone I knew. Tyler. My best friend. Rage surged through me, hot and blinding. My fingers clenched around the flashlight, so tightly I thought it might snap in half. I forced myself to stay silent, to not charge forward like some wild animal. No, I needed to see. I needed to hear. Their whispers carried through the trees. This is insane, Lauren murmured, her voice barely audible. He's right there, Tyler. He'll find out. Tyler chuckled lowly. Relax. He trusts you. He doesn't have a clue. Something inside me snapped. I didn't trust myself to stay any longer. Turning on my heel, I walked back the way I came, my mind racing with everything I had just witnessed. My best friend, my wife, out here in the middle of nowhere, sneaking around like I was some kind of fool. But they had made one mistake. They thought I didn't have a clue. By the time I reached the campsite, my rage had transformed into something else entirely. Cold, calculated. I was done being the idiot. The stillness of the night had changed. The usual sounds of the forest, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustling of branches in the wind, now felt different, like they were whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. My gut told me something was wrong. Lauren's sleeping bag was empty, the tent unzipped just enough for someone to slip out without making much noise. I listened, my heartbeat syncing with the crackling of the fire outside. Then, I heard it. Faint laughter carried by the wind, coming from somewhere deep in the woods. I stepped out of the tent, careful not to make a sound. The fire had burned low, casting shadows across the trees. The laughter came again, this time paired with hushed voices. My fists clenched. I knew that voice. Tyler, my so-called best friend. My body moved on instinct, every step deliberate, avoiding twigs and leaves that might betray my approach. The deeper I went, the more the air shifted, thicker, heavier with something I couldn't put into words. I spotted a break in the trees where the moonlight pooled onto an open clearing, and there they were. Lauren, tangled up with Tyler on a blanket we had used just the night before. Her hands on his shoulders, his lips moving against her neck. Something inside me snapped, but instead of rushing forward, screaming, demanding answers, I forced myself to stay in control. There was no point in a confrontation. Not yet. I stepped back into the cover of the trees, my mind racing. If I reacted now, all I would get were excuses, apologies laced with lies. No, they had already made their choices. Now it was time for me to make mine. I moved quickly but carefully back to the campsite, grabbing everything I needed, my bag, the extra supplies, the car keys. Lauren had left her phone on the table by the fire. I picked it up, my thumb hovering over the screen. Unlocked. Perfect. I scrolled through her messages as I stuffed extra food into my backpack. Texts from Tyler. Weeks of them. Plans made in secret. Excuses crafted to throw me off. I took a deep breath, pocketed her phone, and reached for the notepad we had been using for small reminders. With slow, deliberate strokes, I wrote out my final message. Hope you enjoy nature as much as you enjoy betrayal. It's an 18-mile hike back. Good luck. I ripped the page out and pinned it to a tree using Tyler's prize hunting knife, the same one he had bragged about bringing just in case. I smirked. Let's see how well he handled the wilderness now. With one last glance at the abandoned tent, I climbed into the truck, turned the key, and drove off. As the road stretched ahead of me, I felt something unexpected relief. I wasn't the one who had gotten lost out there. They were. The road was dark, stretching endlessly through the Montana wilderness. The further I drove, the more the weight on my chest lifted. Lauren and Tyler had made their choices, and now they were stuck with them, literally. I could almost picture them waking up to an empty campsite, confused, their smug little world cracking apart piece by piece as they realized I was gone. The thought was satisfying, but I knew this wasn't over yet. About an hour into the drive, my phone buzzed. I knew who it was before I even looked. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the best of me. Where the hell are you? Lauren's frantic voice filled the truck's cabin. I let the silence stretch before answering. Oh, so you finally noticed? Brandon, this isn't funny. The car is gone. Our stuff is gone. Where are you? I took my time, pulling onto the main highway before responding. 18 miles out, Lauren. Enjoy the hike. You can't just leave us out here. She shrieked. Come back right now. I laughed, the sound surprising even me. Oh, I can. And I did. You're being insane. Insane? No. Loading. Insane is sneaking off into the woods with my best friend and thinking I wouldn't notice. Insane is lying to my face for God knows how long. This This is just me deciding I'm done being played for a fool. There was a long pause on the line, filled only with her ragged breathing. Then the switch flipped. It was just a mistake, okay? It didn't mean anything. Please, Brandon, just come back and we can talk. A mistake. The word alone made my grip tighten on the wheel. You made your choices, Lauren. Now you get to live with them. I hung up. For the next hour, my phone kept buzzing. Calls from Lauren, texts alternating between apologies, rage, and outright threats. Then, a new number popped up. Tyler. I rolled my eyes and answered. Hope you're enjoying the great outdoors, buddy. You're a psycho, man, he shouted. You just left us out here with nothing. You can't just... I cut him off. Oh, but I did. I hope your survival skills are as good as you claim. Otherwise, that hike is going to be rough. You think you're tough, huh? You're a coward, Brandon. Coward? Funny, coming from the guy who was sneaking around behind my back. I chuckled. You and Lauren deserve each other. You don't get it. She came to me, man. You weren't. I hung up before he could finish. I wasn't interested in hearing whatever excuse he was about to make. I reached town just as the sun started rising, pulling into a small diner to grab some breakfast. The place was quiet, the smell of coffee and bacon filling the air. I ordered my food, then pulled out my phone. Lauren had left another voicemail. I hit play. Brandon, please. I'm sorry. Okay. Just come back. It was stupid. It was a mistake. I love you. Please don't do this. Her voice cracked, but I couldn't tell if it was real or just another performance. You don't have to answer. Just come back. I stared at the phone for a long moment before deleting the message. A waitress walked up, setting my plate down in front of me. Rough night? She asked with a sympathetic smile. I exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in years. You have no idea. The sun had fully risen by the time I finished breakfast, and as I sat in the quiet diner, stirring the last bit of my coffee, my phone buzzed again. Another call from Lauren. I let it go to voicemail. Then another. And another. Each time, my phone vibrated against the table like an annoying mosquito I refused to swat. When the notifications finally stopped, I scrolled through my messages, skimming over the chaotic mix of rage, desperation, and half-baked apologies. Lauren, I swear it didn't mean anything. Lauren, Brandon, please just answer me. Lauren, you can't leave us out here like this. This is cruel. Tyler, you're a real piece of work, dude. Lauren, I'm going to call the cops if you don't come back. This is abandonment. Lauren, Brandon, please. I smirked at that last one. She wasn't calling the cops. What was she going to say? Officer, my husband caught me cheating on him in the woods with his best friend and left me with the guy I betrayed him with? Yeah, good luck with that. I flagged the waitress for the check, sliding a tip under my plate as I stood. You take care now, she said, giving me that look, half concern, half curiosity. You too, I said before stepping outside into the fresh morning air. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with something that wasn't betrayal or anger for the first time in what felt like years. I was free, but I wasn't done yet. I made a stop at the local hardware store, picking up a brand new set of locks for the house. If Lauren thought she was coming home after this, she had another thing coming. After that, I called my lawyer. Brandon, it's early, he grumbled. Early bird catches the divorce, I said, sliding into my truck. There was a pause, then a sigh. What happened? I gave him the short version. The camping trip, the late-night rendezvous, the 18-mile hike I'd gifted them. He chuckled at that last part. Not bad, he admitted. But you know she's going to play the victim, right? She can play whatever role she wants, I said, pulling onto the highway. I just need the papers ready by the time she gets back. Consider it done. Hanging up, I finally felt like I was in control again. Lauren had been steering this marriage into the ground for years, and I had let it happen, too blinded by love, routine, and misplaced trust. Not anymore. As I neared home, I took a detour to a storage facility and rented a unit. Anything Lauren owned that wasn't nailed down was going in there. She'd get a neatly packed collection of her things, and nothing more. No drama. No yelling. No pathetic attempts at reconciliation. Just a cold, clear message. You lost everything the second you thought I wouldn't find out. By the time I arrived at the house, I was running on pure adrenaline. I switched out the locks, set up a camera at the front door just in case, and started boxing up Lauren's things. Wedding photos, clothes, her ridiculous collection of scented candles. Every trace of her life in this house was systematically erased. As I packed, my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. I debated ignoring it, but picked up just for the fun of it. Yeah. A weak, exhausted voice came through. Brandon? I leaned against the counter, staring out the window at the quiet street. Lauren, please, she said, her voice raw. I just got back into town. I'm good for you. I need to see you. We need to talk. I let out a slow exhale, pretending to consider it. Sure, you can swing by and pick up your stuff. It's in storage now. She went silent. Then, barely above a whisper, you changed the locks? Of course I did. Brandon, please. Let me in. We can fix this. I let out a bitter laugh. Fix what, Lauren? You didn't just break this marriage. You torched it. And you did it for what? A quick thrill in the woods with my so-called best friend? It wasn't like that. She sobbed. I don't know why I did it. I felt lost and I made a mistake. But I love you. You love me? I repeated, shaking my head. No, you love what I provided. You love the security, the stability. But you didn't love me, Lauren. If you did, you wouldn't have done what you did. I heard her breathing, shaky and uneven. What do I do now? I glanced at the neatly stacked boxes by the door. You figure it out. Then, without waiting for her response, I hung up. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle around me. Then, with a deep breath, I picked up the first box and carried it to the truck. Lauren would have to face the consequences of her actions. And I was finally moving on. The moment I hung up on Lauren, I knew she wasn't going to just accept her fate and walk away. People like her never did. She was desperate, not because she loved me, but because she had lost control. The walls were closing in, and she was scrambling for any foothold she could find. I had seen it in her voice, the way her breath hitched when she realized she was locked out, the raw panic when she understood that I was truly done. But I knew Lauren. She wasn't giving up without a fight. Sure enough, an hour later, I heard the unmistakable sound of a car pulling into the driveway. I glanced at the security camera feed on my phone and saw her standing outside the front door, disheveled, still in the torn, dirt-streaked jeans she had hiked back in. She pounded on the door with an urgency that might have meant something once. Brandon, open the door. I took my time walking over, letting her stew. When I finally swung the door open, I leaned against the frame, arms crossed. What do you want, Lauren? Her eyes were red-rimmed, her lips pressed into a trembling line. Let me inside. Please. I shook my head. Not happening. Where are my things? Storage unit off Route 6. Unit 214. The key is at the front desk. Take whatever you want and don't come back. Her jaw tightened. You're seriously kicking me out? Over one mistake? I let out a dry chuckle. One mistake? You don't accidentally crawl into the arms of another man in the middle of the night, Lauren. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. She stepped forward, trying to close the distance between us, but I didn't move. I messed up. I know that. But you're acting like I don't mean anything to you. Like our years together didn't mean anything. They meant something, I admitted, which is why it hurts so much to know they meant nothing to you. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. I had spent too long letting those tears soften my resolve. I had spent too long making excuses for her, forgiving things I shouldn't have forgiven. Not this time. Where am I supposed to go? She whispered. Not my problem. Her face crumpled. Brandon, don't do this. We can fix it. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. Whatever it takes? Yes, she breathed. Anything. All right then. Admit to everyone what you did. Call your parents. Tell your friends. Hell, tell my family. Own up to what you did, instead of playing the victim. Her lips parted, and for a moment, I thought she might actually do it. But then the hesitation set in. The flicker of resistance. You can't be serious. I smirked, and that's why this is over. Because deep down, you're not sorry you cheated. You're sorry you got caught. She shook her head, backing away as if I had struck her. You're being cruel. No, Lauren. You were cruel. I'm just finally done playing the fool. Her expression hardened. The desperation melted away, replaced with something colder, more calculated. You think you're so righteous. But you're just bitter. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, stepping back inside. But at least I won't be regretting it with a liar. I shut the door in her face and locked it. The pounding started again, but I ignored it. Eventually, after minutes that stretched too long, the noise stopped. I watched through the camera as she stood there, shaking with rage, before finally storming off. I exhaled. It was done. I had broken free. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of rebuilding. I expected silence after I shut the door on Lauren. Maybe a few more desperate knocks, a few sobs for dramatic effect, but eventually she would leave. Instead, she did what I should have seen coming. She escalated. My phone buzzed in my pocket before I even stepped away from the door. Her name flashed on the screen, and I sighed, rejecting the call. A moment later, another call. Then a text. Lauren, we need to talk. I'm not leaving until you talk to me. Brandon, open the damn door. I ignored every message, but then my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Lauren. It was my mother. I hesitated before answering. Mom? Brandon, she said, her voice tight. Lauren just called me in tears, saying you locked her out and won't let her get her things. What is going on? I clenched my jaw. She can get her things. I told her exactly where they are. She says you're throwing her out like garbage. My mother pressed. After everything you two have been through? After everything we've been through? I repeated, nearly laughing. Mom, she cheated on me. With Tyler. On our camping trip. Silence. A sharp inhale. Brandon, are you sure? I caught them, I said simply. She's lucky I didn't leave her and Tyler out there for the wolves. Another pause. Then a shift. That ungrateful little yeah, I muttered. All right, she said, her voice firmer now. Then you do whatever you need to. Don't let her twist this. And don't let her guilt you into anything. That's the plan, I said. We hung up, and I glanced out the window. Lauren was pacing by her car, phone pressed to her ear. No doubt calling someone else to rally to her side. But it wasn't going to work. Not this time. I stepped outside, hands in my pockets, and her head snapped up. You call my mom? I asked, raising an eyebrow. She crossed her arms. I had no choice. You weren't listening. I scoffed. Oh, I heard you just fine. You just don't like that I'm done with your games. Her face twisted in frustration. Brandon, please. Just talk to me. Not like this. Not while you're so angry. You don't get to tell me how to feel, I said coldly. You don't get to decide when we talk or how I react. You made your choice, Lauren. And I'm making mine. Her breathing grew uneven, like she was gearing up for another emotional outburst, but I wasn't going to entertain it. I turned back toward the house. Brandon, she shouted, voice cracking. We were happy. We could be happy again. I stopped, but didn't turn around. You know what the worst part is, Lauren? I believe that. I really did. But the truth is, I was happy. You were just looking for an escape. I wasn't. She insisted, but it was a lie. We both knew it. I glanced over my shoulder. Storage unit. Route 6. Unit 214. That's all I have left to say to you. She let out a strangled noise, half frustration, half despair. You'll regret this. I gave her a humorless smile. No, Lauren. I won't. I walked inside and shut the door, locking it behind me. She screamed outside, but I didn't listen. Eventually, the noise stopped. The silence in the house was almost eerie. It had been years since I'd lived alone, and now the emptiness seemed to press in from every direction. Lauren was gone. For the first time in our marriage, her presence wasn't looming in the background, filling the space with tension, forced laughter, or the weight of unspoken truths. I should have felt relieved, maybe even victorious, but all I felt was drained. I spent the first few days moving through life in a daze. Work was a welcome distraction, a place where I didn't have to think about the wreckage of my personal life. But the moment I walked through the front door each evening, the weight of it all crashed down again. The empty spot where a car used to be. The closet, half full, a ghost of the life we once had. The fridge, still stocked with food she liked but I never touched. I needed to get out of the house. I found myself at the gym late at night, pushing my body past exhaustion, trying to drown out the thoughts that clawed at the edges of my mind. Lauren's betrayal had done more than destroy our marriage. It had shattered the foundation of trust one had built my life on. How long had she been unhappy? How long had I been blind? And the worst question of all, had I ever really known her? One night, as I was leaving the gym, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello? There was silence, then a shaky breath. Brandon, it's me. Lauren. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. What do you want? She trailed off, her voice cracking. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be without you. A bitter laugh escaped me. You seemed fine without me when you were with Tyler. That's not fair, she snapped. I made a mistake. You made a choice. I cut her off. And now you get to live with it. She sniffled, and for a brief second I almost felt bad. Almost. I never wanted this, she whispered. I was lost, Brandon. We were stuck in a routine, and I thought maybe I needed something else. And did you find it? I asked. There was a long silence. Then, barely above a whisper, no. I shook my head. You know what's funny? I would have moved mountains for you. I would have fought to fix things, if you just told me you were unhappy. But you didn't. You lied. You betrayed me. And now, you don't get to come crawling back because you're scared of being alone. I still love you, she said, voice raw. I felt nothing. I don't. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Finally, she spoke, barely audible. Goodbye, Brandon. I hung up without another word. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I stepped outside, breathing in the crisp autumn air, watching as the leaves swirled in the wind. It was a new season in more ways than one. It was time to start over. The days passed in a blur, but something felt different now. The weight of betrayal, once pressing down on me like an anchor, had started to lift. I no longer woke up dreading the silence of the house. I no longer checked my phone, expecting another desperate message from Lauren. I had spent too much time grieving someone who didn't deserve it. It was time to move forward. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects, reconnecting with colleagues I had neglected during the downward spiral of my marriage. I joined a hiking group on the weekends, spending hours in the mountains, breathing in the fresh air, letting the open sky remind me that life was still vast and full of possibilities. The more I distanced myself from Lauren, the clearer everything became. I had been holding on to an illusion. I had thought we were a team, but I had been the only one fighting for us. Then came the call I had been expecting. Daddy? My niece's voice chirped through the phone. Are you coming to Grandma's for dinner? I smiled. Of course, sweetheart. Tell Grandma I'll bring dessert. I had been avoiding family gatherings since the breakup, not wanting to deal with the inevitable questions and pitying glances. But now I was ready. When I arrived, my mother took one look at me and pulled me into a tight hug. You look good, she said, eyes searching mine. Better. I feel better, I admitted. Dinner was warm and loud, filled with laughter and stories. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged again. I wasn't the guy whose wife cheated on him. I was just Brandon, brother, uncle, son. But the past wasn't quite done with me yet. As I was leaving, my brother pulled me aside. She called me, he said, his expression unreadable. I didn't need to ask who. What did she want? To talk. She said she regrets everything. That she wants to see you. I exhaled, shaking my head. She made her choice. Yeah, he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. Just wanted you to know. Later that night, as I sat on my porch, sipping a beer, my phone lit up with a message. Lauren, can we talk? I stared at the screen, feeling nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just certainty. Me, there's nothing left to say. I hit send and turned off my phone. The stars were bright that night, stretching endlessly over the horizon. A reminder that life was still out there waiting, and I was finally ready to live it.